Welcome back to Morning Line, everyone. Nick Barris here, coming to you live. Also with me this morning is Dr. Lloyda Williamson. She is the chair and professor at the Psychiatry School at Meharry Medical College. Appreciate her coming on today, talking about kind of the mental aspects of this coronavirus. You know what, Doctor? We had a woman that's messaged us on Facebook. We're streaming live at newschannel5.com. Debbie says, you know, both of her daughters obviously are home from school. Everyone's kids are home from school. My son's back from college, doesn't get his spring term, and, you know, for a lot of the kids, I mean, we talk in general, it affects us all, but what about younger people, especially those who aren't in school with their friends and are more isolated? What can they do?
What can they do? Well, there are various online resources for different activities. I think some of the individuals on earlier reports have talked about being able to read books from the library, doing some things in person that we haven't done before, if you have board games, or just doing some creative activities. Having conversations with family members so that you're doing things together, such as maybe preparing meals, or, you know, so doing things together and engaging together instead of isolating within our homes, I think would be great.
That makes sense. And let me ask you this. Again, I'm in the news business, and I know most mature adults and young people too want to pay attention to the very latest developments on this. But is there a point, and I'm wondering what you do, Doctor, at some point where you don't watch the news every darn night because it's just sometimes, and I'll admit it, kind of depressing? I mean, I want to know what's happening, but even I tune it out some when I get home. I get back up to speed. But at what point do you say, hey, you know what, maybe step away from the news for a while? You know what you need to do. What about that?
Exactly. And so every person is different, but that's an excellent question, Nick. Knowing and sort of paying attention to your internal state. So being aware of feeling a little bit more irritable or anxious or moody, and understanding your routine. And say, for example, for me, it's actually better to listen to the news and pay more attention to the news in the morning, so that when I'm going to bed, that's not the last thing I see and hear, so that I can relax when I sleep, which is sort of counterintuitive, you know, because there's a lot of nighttime news. But there's access all the time, 24 hours a day. If you miss it in the night, you're going to catch it in the morning. So I think paying attention to yourself, and then equally making sure that you have activities to boost your mood, whether it's eating pleasurable foods or having pleasurable conversations. I talked to somebody yesterday who likes watching those old sitcoms that were just really funny back in the day. So every person is a little bit different. But as we're dealing with increasing negative influences, we want to make sure that we put more positive into that.
I think you're exactly right.
For many people, that
Go
many
ahead.
people, there's also a spiritual focus. So making sure that you're connecting with people in your community of faith, reading uplifting and positive, inspirational material, religious books, those sort of things can also add to your positive equation.
I agree. I'll tell you this, you know, in American society today, as you well know, we are all so busy, and it's horrible that it's come about in this manner. But when's the last time you had all this time potentially at home, and yes, there's worry there above you, but to do things that you never had time to do before, even if it's just something like taking a bath and reading a book? When's the last time you had a chance to do that, or do the spring cleaning or whatever? This is a chance to do exactly what you're saying. Doctor, we have a caller on line one. Let's take Jeff and see what his question is. Jeff, good morning. What's on your mind?
Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Good.
I've just tuned in, so I don't know if it's been asked yet, but I was wondering how the homeless are dealing with this thing, and is the room at the inn open, and is the mission open?
Okay. Yeah, we're going to check on some of those basic details. But yeah, there's different segments of our population, Doctor, and the homeless are certainly part of that. And I don't know if they're a bit off the radar, but they obviously are experiencing and suffering from this as well.
They are, and to be honest with you, with some of the issues that I've been dealing with, I haven't been as connected with the homeless population, but they are definitely a vulnerable population, and I know that our city is working to make sure that they have a place to be as much as possible, so that their needs are being met for shelter and food as well. I'm sorry I don't have specific details regarding the specific organizations that you asked
Gotcha.
about.
And we'll check on that. And again, yeah, I wouldn't expect you to have those details, but we'll double check on what's happening with some of the shelters, which I know many of them are still open, but they're taking precautions. One aspect of all of this that's happening is you do worry, and as we've seen even before this happened, the cases of suicide and folks that maybe feel so helpless they get to that point. I know, and I've posted on my Facebook page, that there are still helplines out there. Talk a bit about that, and if you worry that there could be a spike in that type of activity.
That's an excellent question, Nick, and yes, that is a concern. For certain age groups, the suicide rate has been rising in the United States, and you have to think about risk factors. People who already have pre-existing or undiagnosed mental health issues, people with chronic medical problems, people who live in isolation, and a younger population is increasingly experiencing risk or experiencing suicide. Part of this, and there are multiple factors, multiple reasons for this, but we do believe that the social media may be contributing to this. So as individuals, particularly young people, interact in social media, they may be more exposed to bullying and may not be sharing some of the things that they're experiencing with others. So one of the things I would say is this is a good reason for us to reach out to people that we know that live alone or in isolation to see how they are coping and what they're doing. Even as you're at home with your family and your young people, I think it's a good idea, not just now, but on a regular basis, to limit our young people's access to social media for a specified amount of times, but also be aware of who they are connecting with, and are they experiencing any negative consequences, being bullied or teased because of the way they look or sound, or being an ethnic minority or other minority. So just being aware that these circumstances can present times where there might be a rise in suicide. So it's important to reach out to a hotline. The domestic violence hotline for the YMCA, I can mention that number.
Sure.
Is 615-983-5170. And then if you're experiencing a mental health crisis in the state of Tennessee, that number is 855-274-7471, or 855 crisis. So there are some resources that people can have if they are experiencing undue stress and need to reach somebody immediately.
I'm glad you shared those numbers, Doctor, and I'm glad we did this segment. Hopefully we can do this again with you, but Dr. Williamson, we really, really appreciate you joining us this morning by Skype. Good information, and you're absolutely right. We need to pay attention, not just to ourselves physically and health-wise, but mentally. And thank you again for joining us, Doctor.
You're welcome. We got to remember the brain controls the rest of our body, so we've got to keep it healthy.
All starts up here. Thank you, ma'am. We'll talk to you again. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back when we do. We're going to dig deep into the stimulus package and what it means to you. We'll continue taking calls. You can also message us with your questions about what the stimulus package may do. We're looking into it right now. Passed overnight by Congress. They're going to vote on it, and then the president will sign it. I'll have what you need to know right after this.